He was my boss, a married CEO with a secret I wasn't meant to see, and by morning, I was framed for a crime I didn't commit. But I refused to stay silent, and what started as a fight for my innocence turned into a dangerous game against one of London's most powerful men. Watch as I expose the lies, survive the betrayal, and reclaim everything they tried to take from me. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to follow the full story of suspense, secrets, and a woman who has nothing left to lose. The smell of oak-aged whiskey always clung to my fingertips after closing time. It was comforting in a strange way, like a quiet secret between me and the bar. I'd been working at the Lantern, a dim-lit speakeasy tucked behind Fleet Street, for almost 3 years. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I knew every regular, every bottle, every song that played from the old jukebox in the corner. And among those regulars was him, Richard Hale. He wasn't just any man. He was the CEO of Hale & Sons, one of London's most powerful private investment firms. Everyone in the city seemed to either want a piece of him or feared getting in his way. He was in his mid-40s, married, and carried himself with a kind of calm that made everyone else tense. His tailored suits were as crisp as his reputation. Every Friday, around 9:45 p.m., he came in, alone, ordered 1 glass of 18-year-old scotch, sat at the same stool, third from the left, the one with the small scratch under the counter, and said very little. That night started no different. "Evening, Mr. Hale." I greeted him, polishing a glass while pretending not to be curious why a man with his status spent his nights in a place like this. "Evening, Emma," he said with that slight smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. The usual. I poured the scotch, slid it across the counter, and leaned in just enough to catch the faint scent of his cologne, cedarwood, and something darker, sharper. He was handsome in that distant, impossible-to-reach kind of way. The clock behind the bar ticked past 10. The regulars were dwindling. My manager, Clive, had already disappeared to the office upstairs to count cash. Then the phone rang. "Lantern Bar," I answered. A woman's voice, low and urgent. "He's there, isn't he?" I froze. "I'm sorry, who's speaking?" The line went dead. When I turned around, Richard was watching me, not with anger, but with an unreadable intensity that made my stomach knot. "Everything all right?" he asked. "Just a wrong number," I lied, forcing a smile. He nodded slowly, sipping his drink. But his gaze lingered on me longer than usual, and for the first time, I noticed a tremor in his hand as he set the glass down. By midnight, the bar had emptied. Clive was still upstairs, and the silence was thick enough to hear the ice melt in the glasses. I started closing, stacking stools, wiping the counter, pretending not to notice that Richard was still there. "Rough night?" I asked softly, breaking the quiet. He exhaled through his nose, eyes fixed on the amber liquid in his glass. "You could say that." I shouldn't have pushed, but something in his tone made me pause. "You want to talk about it?" His lips curved slightly. "You'd be surprised how much people confess to bartenders." I smirked. "You'd be surprised how much we remember." That earned a low chuckle from him, but it faded as quickly as it came. He stared at the ice again, the reflection of the bar lights flickering in his eyes. "Do you believe people can keep secrets forever, Emma?" The question threw me off. "Depends on the secret." He looked up, holding my gaze. "Some secrets are like cracks in glass. They always show, eventually." A strange silence followed, the kind that made the air feel heavier. Then, before I could respond, I heard voices coming from the corridor behind the bar, the private hallway that led to Clive's office. I frowned. That's odd. Everyone should be gone by now. Richard didn't move, but his jaw tightened. "You should probably lock up," he said quietly. But curiosity got the better of me. I stepped out from behind the bar, heels clicking against the tile, and followed the faint sound of murmuring voices. The office door was slightly ajar. I could make out Clive's voice, and another, unfamiliar one. "A woman." "We agreed, Clive." The files can't be traced back to him, the woman hissed. Clive's response was lower, nervous. You said this was handled. If Hale finds out.
He won't, she snapped.
Not unless your girl behind the bar overhears something she shouldn't. My heart thudded. Your girl behind the bar. They were talking about me. I froze, backing away slowly before either of them could notice me. But as I turned, I caught sight of Richard standing at the end of the corridor, watching me with unreadable calm. He didn't look surprised. He just said, almost softly, "You heard too much, didn't you?" And in that instant, I knew. Whatever I'd stumbled into, it was bigger than me. I didn't sleep that night. Not a single hour. My apartment was quiet, but my mind was a hurricane of whispers and shadows. Every detail of what I'd overheard replayed in my head. Clive, the woman, Richard, and that look in his eyes. Calm but knowing. By morning, I thought I could go to work as usual, put on the professional mask and pretend nothing happened. I told myself I had to, after all. It was just a misunderstanding, right? I was wrong. When I walked into the lantern, I immediately sensed that something was off. The front door was locked, though I had the key. A note was pinned to the counter. Emma, do not attempt to enter. Authorities are handling the matter. Management. I frowned and called Clive's office. No answer. I tried the police, but no reports had been filed yet. The unease settled in my stomach like lead. By noon, I saw the news online. My photo flashed across a London crime bulletin. Employee arrested for embezzlement at Lantern Bar. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Embezzlement? I had worked nights pouring drinks, not stealing. How could this happen? The police arrived before I could even process it. They didn't seem suspicious, just coldly professional, reading from a script. Emma Collins? Yes. You're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and tampering with company records. I opened my mouth, but no words came. This had to be a mistake. The officer's eyes were blank, and his hand gripped the handcuffs like it was routine. I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. The ride to the station was silent. I tried to piece it together. What could have led to this? My mind raced back to the previous night. Had Clive and that woman set this up? Or was Richard involved? At the station, I was processed and questioned. Every word I said was met with skepticism. Every denial seemed to confirm their suspicion. They presented documents, fake financial records, altered transaction logs, receipts that had my name scrawled on them. I looked at them, disbelief in my eyes. I didn't do any of this. I swear. The officer sighed. We're just following procedure, Miss Collins. The evidence is pretty clear. And then it hit me. This wasn't random.
Someone had planned this. Carefully.
The thought of Richard crossed my mind again. He had been the last person I'd seen the night before, calm, collected, knowing. Had he orchestrated this? Was I a pawn in some corporate chess game I didn't even know existed? I spent hours in that sterile, cold room, thinking, replaying every detail, searching for a crack, a clue, a lifeline. I realized something. I had nothing left to lose. My reputation, my job, my life as I knew it, it had all been ripped away in a single night. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of something dangerous. Determination. I would fight this. Not for justice. Not for morality. But because I had no other choice. Some secrets, I realized, were worth uncovering. Even if they destroyed everyone involved, including me. The world outside the station felt unreal. London streets were buzzing with morning traffic, oblivious to my life unraveling. Every face I passed seemed sharp, judging. Some probably had already seen the news. I was released on bail that afternoon, but freedom was only a word. The headlines still haunted me. Bartender accused of embezzlement in high-profile London bar. When I returned to my apartment, I was greeted by silence, the kind that presses in on your chest. My phone had dozens of missed calls. Clive, lawyers, unknown numbers. Most went unanswered. Emails from friends were distant, polite, but wary. I realized that in a single night, my world had been reduced to an echo. I tried calling Richard. The line went straight to voicemail.
Of course it did.
That's when I knew something else. Someone had deliberately cut me off from any support. Clive, the woman, maybe even Richard, everyone had their part in this. But why? Why frame me? What had I stumbled into that was bigger than a bar dispute or a mismanaged account? The answer didn't come immediately, but a clue did. On my kitchen counter was an envelope. No stamp, no return address, just my name written in elegant, familiar handwriting. My pulse quickened as I tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. It was me. From the previous night at the bar, but not just me. Behind me in the background, partially hidden in the shadows, was a man I had never seen in person, but I knew who he was. Richard. And beside him, the same woman from Clive's office. The photograph captured something intimate, almost conspiratorial. They were speaking in hushed tones, looking around as if to make sure no one was watching. A note slipped beneath the photo read, "You are never supposed to see this, Emma. Stay silent, or it will only get worse." I held the photograph in my hands, feeling the weight of every choice I had left. Panic clawed at my throat, but beneath it, a spark of anger flared. No one warned me before stepping into this world of corporate power, betrayal, and manipulation. But now that I had, I couldn't turn back. For the first time, I understood the rules. If I didn't fight, I'd be crushed. If I spoke, I'd become a target. I needed a plan. Not a reckless one. Careful, strategic, and silent. I couldn't trust Clive, the bar, or even Richard. But I could trust my instincts. I spent the next hours going through every detail I remembered from that night. Every interaction with Richard, Clive, and the woman. Every detail about the bar, the office, the hidden hallway. I wrote it all down. Names, dates, snippets of conversations. Anything that might matter. The first step was clear. I needed information. Proof. Something that would not only clear my name, but expose the truth. And so, as night fell over London, I made my decision. I wasn't going to wait for the world to crush me. I was going to fight back. But even as I planned, a small voice inside whispered the danger. Richard Hale wasn't a man who lost. And now, I was standing directly in his game. London was colder at night, sharper somehow, like the city itself was warning me to be careful. I walked the streets with my coat pulled tight, notebook tucked under my arm, feeling the weight of every shadow. I knew the truth wasn't going to be handed to me. I had to take it. I started small. The bar was my first stop. The Lantern had been closed for investigation, or at least that's what the public record said. But I knew it held secrets, hidden ledgers, emails, perhaps even cameras that could prove what really happened the night I was framed. Peering through the dusty window, I saw the familiar bottles, the dim amber lights. Memories of serving Richard flashed across my mind, but there was no time for nostalgia. I slipped in through the back door. Surprisingly, it hadn't been fully secured. My heart pounded, but I moved with purpose, heading straight for Clive's office. Inside, the desk drawers were open, papers scattered, evidence of the chaos left behind. I rifled quickly, careful to disturb nothing more than necessary. Then I found it, a folder marked Hale and Sons, Confidential. Inside were documents that didn't just implicate me, they implicated everyone. Contracts, memos, emails between Clive and the mysterious woman, even financial records pointing to off-the-books accounts. The handwriting on some notes was unmistakable. Richard Hale's. It was bigger than embezzlement. Someone had carefully orchestrated a scheme to cover something far more dangerous, something I wasn't supposed to see. I snapped photos with my phone, my hands shaking. Every click of the shutter felt like a heartbeat in a room full of ghosts. I didn't notice the shadow moving behind the door until a voice said, low and sharp, "I knew you'd come back." I spun around. A man stood in the doorway, not a police officer, not Clive, not the mysterious woman. He was older, graying at the temples, dressed in a tailored coat, but there was something gentle in his gaze. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly but not threatening. "I could say the same," I replied, holding the folder close. He stepped closer, hands raised in peace. "I'm not here to hurt you. Name's Daniel Brooks. I used to work for Hale and Sons. I know what they're capable of." I eyed him suspiciously. "And why should I trust you?" "Because unlike you, I've been trapped in their game for years. I've seen what happens to people who cross Richard Hale. I don't want you to make the same mistake." I studied him. There was no immediate threat in his posture, no hidden agenda I could detect, though I knew better than to assume. "All right," I said cautiously. "You tell me what you know, but any lies and I walk." Daniel nodded. "I can help you prove your innocence, Emma. But it won't be easy, and it'll be dangerous. Hale doesn't forgive mistakes. He doesn't even acknowledge them. They just disappear." A shiver ran down my spine, but I felt something else too. Relief. For the first time since the arrest, I had a chance. Someone who knew the game and could guide me through it. We leaned over the scattered papers together, and as he explained connections I hadn't even suspected, a grim clarity settled over me.
This wasn't just about me.
It was about power, control, and secrets so deep that exposing them could ruin everything. And I was ready to risk it all. The following days were a blur of secrecy and tension. I couldn't return to my apartment. I stayed at a small, nondescript flat Daniel had arranged, one that wasn't connected to me in any official records. Every phone call was cautious, every message encrypted. I was no longer a bartender or a pawn, I was a target, and I had to act like it. Daniel and I spent hours piecing together the evidence from the lantern. The folder revealed an intricate web: offshore accounts, shell companies, manipulated audits. Clive wasn't just complicit. He was a minor player in a much larger game. What were they covering? I asked late one night, staring at spreadsheets that made my head spin. Daniel shook his head. "Hale isn't just a CEO, Emma. He's a man with secrets that could destroy lives. He protects them at all costs. And that woman, she's not just some accomplice. She's the key to the whole operation." I felt my stomach churn. The woman I had overheard, the one who'd whispered in Clive's office. She wasn't just involved. She was dangerous, cunning, and protected by a man who wouldn't blink before ruining me. "And me?" I asked quietly. "Why frame me?" Daniel leaned back, tired and solemn. "Because you stumbled into the wrong conversation at the wrong time. You're expendable." And he wants to send a message to anyone who might get too curious. The thought made my blood boil. My life was torn apart because I had the audacity to be in the wrong place, noticing the wrong things. We worked late into the night, cross-referencing names, numbers, and dates. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Richard Hale wasn't covering just minor corporate misdeeds. He was laundering money through multiple channels, using people like Clive and the woman as buffers. "And that means," Daniel said, pointing at a series of emails, "you saw something you weren't supposed to. That photo you found? It wasn't random. It was a test. They wanted to see if you'd be a threat." I swallowed hard. The realization hit me like a punch. Every choice from that night, every detail I had remembered, was part of a trap. But the anger was growing stronger than the fear. I clenched my fists. "Then we expose it. All of it. Every last piece. And clear my name." Daniel hesitated. "You understand what that means? If Hale finds out." "I don't care," I said firmly. "I've got nothing left to lose." The next day, we followed a lead from the documents, an abandoned warehouse near the docks, supposedly a storage point for some of the illicit transactions. The streets were quiet, the kind of silence that makes the hairs on your neck stand on end. Daniel led the way, careful, every step measured. Inside, crates were stacked haphazardly, shadows twisting in the corners. Daniel pulled out a flashlight, revealing envelopes, boxes, and stacks of documents marked with Hale and Sons logos. "This is it," he whispered. "Physical evidence, untraceable to you." I moved closer, examining the boxes. My heart raced. If we could get these, we could prove everything. But something felt off. Too quiet. Too easy. Then I heard it, a soft click behind me. Before I could react, a figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, imposing, with that same calm, impossible aura. Richard Hale. "You really shouldn't be here, Emma," he said, voice smooth, almost amused. "Curiosity is dangerous, especially for women like you." I froze. The folder in my hand felt heavier than ever. Daniel stepped in front of me, protective, but I knew it was futile. Hale's presence alone shifted the air, made it suffocating. "I warned you once," he continued. "Now it's your choice. Walk away or fall." But I couldn't. Not now. Not after everything. And as Hale advanced, I felt a new resolve. I wouldn't just survive this. I would fight him and win. Richard's presence filled the warehouse like a storm. Even in the shadows, his eyes glimmered with that same unreadable intensity. My pulse raced, but my fear was tangled with adrenaline, sharp and electrifying. Daniel's hand trembled as he tightened his grip on my arm. "Emma, maybe we should." "No," I interrupted firmly. "We're not running anymore." Hale tilted his head, amused, like he enjoyed the little fire in me. "Bold," he said softly. "Very bold. Most people fold the second they realize how deep the rabbit hole goes." I swallowed hard, keeping my voice steady. "I don't fold. And I'm not afraid of you." A laugh escaped him, low and dangerous. "You should be." He stepped closer, and I realized the truth. Richard Hale thrived on fear. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a game. And now I was part of it. Daniel whispered urgently, "Emma, we need to leave. We can come back with authorities." "No," I hissed. "I need to hear what he's hiding. I need to see his cracks." Hale's expression darkened slightly. "Cracks," he repeated, eyes narrowing. "You really are reckless."
But fine.
"Let's play a little game. You have 24 hours to decide. Stay silent, or everything you care about gone. Your life, your reputation, your freedom." I met his gaze and felt a strange clarity. 24 hours. That was all the time I needed. Time to gather proof, to turn the tables, to make him realize I wasn't just a pawn. The warehouse suddenly felt colder, emptier, but also alive with possibility. We left the warehouse carefully, Hale watching us silently from the shadows, his figure disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Outside, London's streets were bright, mundane, oblivious to the danger that had just brushed against us. Daniel and I huddled in the small flat, our whispers barely audible. "He's dangerous, Emma. This isn't just corporate politics. He'll destroy anyone who moves against him," Daniel warned. "I know," I replied, voice steady despite the tension. "But now I understand the game. He thrives on fear, manipulation, and secrecy. That's why we need evidence. Proof that can't be ignored, that can't be erased." We spent the night outlining every move. Our plan was risky. Obtain digital evidence, expose financial misdeeds, and make sure Hale couldn't cover his tracks before the public or authorities caught on. The thrill and terror coexisted inside me. Every step forward was a risk, every discovery a potential trap. But I felt alive in a way I hadn't since before the arrest. By dawn, a strategy had formed. Access Hale and Sons' secure servers through an overlooked internal vulnerability. Gather documents linking him and the woman to illicit activities. Leak them anonymously to multiple sources, journalists, regulators, law enforcement, so no single entity could suppress the truth. Clear my name publicly once the evidence was undeniable. It was audacious. It was dangerous. And it was exactly what I needed. As the first light of morning crept through the blinds, I realized something profound. I wasn't just fighting to reclaim my life. I was stepping into the very heart of a monster, and I was ready to face him head-on. The days that followed were a blur of stealth, nerves, and calculated risk. Daniel helped me hack into a minor backdoor of Hale and Sons' digital systems, a vulnerability overlooked in their arrogance. I'd never done anything like this before, but desperation sharpens the mind. Every keystroke felt like walking a tightrope above a pit of fire. One mistake, one trace, and Hale would know I was inside. And he wouldn't hesitate to strike. As I dug deeper, I uncovered emails and financial transfers so intricate they seemed almost untouchable. Offshore accounts disguised as legitimate operations, falsified audits, bribes disguised as consultancy fees. And then a folder titled, Project Eden Confidential. My stomach twisted. What's this? I whispered to Daniel.
He swallowed hard.
That's the core of his empire. This is what he's been protecting at all costs. If this leaks, Hale falls. I opened the folder carefully. Inside were documents tying the mysterious woman, Clive's accomplice, to a series of illicit deals with Hale. But there was more, photographs, recordings, even notes about me. They had been observing me, tracking every move since that night. A chill ran down my spine. I wasn't just a pawn. I had been a potential threat in their eyes from the very beginning. Then came a sudden ping on my laptop. An alert. Someone had accessed the same system I was in, from within Hale and Sons. My heart leapt. He knows, I whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. We need to move.
Now.
I shut the laptop, tucked it into my bag, and we left the flat. Outside, London was awake, unaware that a storm was brewing beneath its polished surface. We moved quickly through the city, switching locations, never staying in one place for long. I kept thinking about that photograph, the first clue I had stumbled upon, and how it had thrown me into this nightmare. Every step, every glance over my shoulder, reminded me that Hale had eyes everywhere. But amidst the fear, determination burned brighter. Every document I'd found, every secret unearthed, was a brick in the fortress I was building, not to protect me, but to bring him down. That night, Daniel and I arranged to meet a journalist with a reputation for exposing corporate scandals. He was cautious, skeptical, but when I showed him the evidence, his eyes widened. This could take him down, he said, voice low. But you need to be careful. Hale doesn't just fight back, he obliterates anyone in his way. I nodded. I know, but I have to do this. As we left the meeting, I felt the first true sense of control in weeks. Hale might be powerful, ruthless, untouchable, or so he thought. But I had something he didn't, the courage of a woman who had nothing left to lose. The streets of London stretched out ahead of me, dark and endless. But I was no longer afraid. I was ready to face Hale, to confront him, and to survive his game and win. The city at night felt different now. London was no longer just streets and buildings. It was a labyrinth of opportunities, secrets, and dangers. Every step I took brought me closer to the confrontation I had been preparing for. Daniel and I had spent weeks gathering evidence, documenting everything. Digital records, photographs, emails, recordings. Everything had to be airtight. One slip, one wrong move, and Hale would crush us before we could breathe. We met with the journalist one last time, handing over the final files. His eyes scanned the documents, disbelief flashing across his face. This is everything, he whispered. If we publish this, Hale's empire falls.
Completely.
But are you sure you're ready for the backlash?
I paused.
The weight of those words hit me, but I knew there was no turning back. I have to be, I said firmly. Not just for me, but for everyone he's used, threatened, and destroyed. The plan was simple in theory. Leak the evidence to multiple independent channels at once: journalists, regulators, law enforcement. So Hale couldn't suppress it. We had to be faster than him, smarter than him, and invisible until the storm hit. The night we executed the plan, my hands trembled as I pressed send on the final batch of encrypted files. Within minutes, notifications began flooding in. Journalists confirming receipt, authorities opening inquiries, financial watchdogs taking notice. Hale was blindsided. For the first time, he wasn't in control. Panic, subtle but undeniable, rippled through his empire. The next morning, news outlets broke the story. Headlines screamed, "Hale and Sons scandal. CEO under investigation for corruption and fraud. Corporate empire crumbles. Inside the Project Eden exposure." I watched from a quiet cafe, a hot cup of coffee in my hands, the world outside moving on as if nothing had changed. But I knew differently. I had changed. Daniel joined me, his expression a mix of relief and awe. "You did it, Emma," he said softly. I smiled, a weight lifting from my shoulders. We did it. But it's not just about winning. It's about surviving and proving I wasn't a pawn. I have my life back. In the weeks that followed, Clive was arrested, the mysterious woman vanished, and Richard Hale faced intense scrutiny. My name was cleared, my reputation restored. I returned to the bar world. Not the Lantern, but a new venture where I was in control, respected, and finally free from manipulation. That night, as I poured a glass of whiskey for myself, my own ritual now, I realized something profound. Losing everything had given me clarity, strength, and courage I never knew I had. Sometimes, the fire that threatens to destroy you is the very thing that forges you into someone unstoppable. And I was unstoppable. In the end, I reclaimed my life, but the experience taught me one thing. Strength isn't about avoiding danger. It's about standing up when everything is against you. Never let anyone make you feel powerless, because the fire that tests you is the very thing that makes you unstoppable.
If this story gave you chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen play out?